All right, everyone, I can almost hear Esteval screeching slightly in the background. Bernie Sanders coming out, and instead of saying, well, yeah, socialism isn't the right word for what I believe in, he came out and said, yeah, I'm a socialist, and here's what democratic socialism means. It means free stuff for everybody, free ice cream, free healthcare, free college. In his case, not a free wig, I suppose. The problem was this. Socialism, in order to work, would rely upon the concept of the benevolence of the human race, the idea that people are share and share alike hippie-trippy communists, basically. It's the same way any other utopian ideology simply does not work. What works best is that you have a 99% free market capitalistic laissez-faire system in which government is kept very constrained and in which there are constraints on private enterprise to the extent that you're preventing monopolies and victimization, and that's pretty much it. And preventing foreign states from victimizing you by having a military. That's basically what the state needs to do. The redistributionist system that we currently have is very, very inefficient. The problem is that with each step, with each bureau or person involved in transfer of funds, you lose a little bit of efficiency. It's just like in a machine. The more simplistic it is, the more efficient. Now, you can fine-tune it. You can make it as efficient as you can, keep it lubed up really well and sanded down and really, really chic and flows really nice. The more convolutions, the more things that you have added to it, the more it's going to tend to break down, and the more, by the way, effort required to maintain it. That's why socialism doesn't work. It's for purely structural reasons. It's incapable. It relies on human benevolence, and it becomes too complex because you have to have so much bureaucracy. The only way you could have a redistributionist state is if it was almost an ANCAP society in which people just decided to share with each other. Well, Mr. Sanders, that is not the way human beings are. That's why we have separation of powers. That's why we have a bicameral legislature. That's why we have a Second Amendment, the idea of the people balancing the power of their own government or any foreign state with their own armaments. All of these things are created to create balance. But Sanders has gone off into left field. The thing is, some people within it's like, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's like, no, I'm not a socialist, I'm a social democrat. There's no difference, really, but they're afraid of using that term. Sanders is at least being honest about the fact that he doesn't understand economics. Socialism will not work. Look at Venezuela. That's an example of real socialism. Scandinavia, which is always held up on a pedestal by leftists, is not an example of a socialist system. It's an example of a bit of socialism overlapped onto a hyper-capitalistic system. It's almost beyond cronyism how the fuel industry in Sweden and some of these other things work. But you wouldn't know that because you're not being told that by Sanders. I'd also like to say something else. That socialism that they do entail will keep growing over time and eventually strangulate that capitalism and destroy their economies too. The fact that they happen to be a hyper-literate society with a good infrastructure they've already built on the back of capitalism that's sustaining the socialism they have isn't going to save them long term. They will eventually suffer because of that. Sorry to say to people in Norway and Sweden, I don't know if you can even watch my YouTube channel anymore. That's a problem. Also, I'd say this. Look at Bernie Sanders' plan for paying for his free shit for everyone program. Free healthcare, free college, debt forgiveness. Look at what it actually means. Again, dig into the actual text. It's freely available on his website. There's a PDF of it. It's like, I think, 20 pages. It's not that complex. The basic story is that it's a lie by omission in his case. He's telling you the truth. He's like, well, we're going to jack up taxes on this income bracket, and the business taxes will go up, 3 or 4%. Taxes on the highest marginal tax rate will hit like 60 or something. Okay, the problem is and Whalen agrees and anyone else with any sanity understands this, if I increase the marginal tax rate on the hyper-rich, like we're talking the billionaire class, the boogeymen of society, the people that were allowed to become that rich specifically because government has started to knock their smaller competitors out of the way through a differential tax code and through hyper-regulation on, through Silicon Valley, their partners in Google and stuff like that. What do you think will happen to the other tax brackets? Do they stay the same? Does it get to the point where there's such a huge leap that if you make $999,999 this year, your marginal tax rate will be 30%, and then you have write-offs and deductions and stuff. If you make one more dollar, all of a sudden it jumps to 60? That's not going to happen. No economist in the world would dream up such a system. People would literally throttle their own income and look for any way to keep below whatever arbitrary threshold it is. It'll always be a scale. It'll always be a sliding system. So if you have a 60% top marginal tax rate on the multimillionaires, then people who are working rich, like doctors and lawyers, you think they're going to keep paying the 30 or so percent that they pay right now usually? You think that their effective tax rate will still be at 25-30%? No, it'll jump to 40 or 50%. Wow, I'm sure those physicians, that won't raise the cost of medicine. It sure as hell won't raise the cost of getting a medical degree. And then Bernie Sanders wants to pay for that. It's a self-feeding system whereby the government will have taken more than half of the productive private marketplace and appropriated it to itself, stolen it basically. And it's not even going to be used to pay for anything good. You think that government health care is going to be good? No, it's going to be like Cuba. It'll be very, very rudimentary. We'll no longer have a particularly good medical system. What will happen is they'll have a parallel system for the haves. The have-nots will get shitty government health care, and the haves will purchase private health care. Unless Bernie Sanders takes the draconian step of saying he wants to outlaw private health care. That'd be interesting. So they'll get really great care. They'll get to the front of the line. They'll even have their own private hospitals for chronic conditions and stuff like that. Your kids with leukemia won't get that treatment, now will they? You'll be going to Canada probably for your treatment at some point. Now you could solve the healthcare crisis by simply dropping the cost by taking government out of the mix. Allow more interstate competition, get rid of the pharma monopolies. They're being propped up by the government through subsidies and tax loopholes. Get rid of that, force them to compete. Stop hyper-regulating new drugs, new treatments, experimental things. Let people voluntarily Trump, he passed this. People can now volunteer for health trials more easily. That's going to significantly increase our medical output. Very good idea, by the way. Allow cross-border competition with Canadian drugs and so forth, drug importation. You will drop and then tort reform. You could probably drop the healthcare cost by 50-60%. It would be really, really easy to do that, and then take government money out of it, let the free market decide. What'll end up happening is that then, at least for people down to the lower middle class, no worries, healthcare will be so much cheaper, so will the insurance. No problem. I would definitely get insurance. It'd be half as expensive. It'd be a no-brainer. Why the fuck wouldn't I have it at that point as someone in the middle class? But right now I'm looking at it like, no, it's awfully expensive and keeps rising every fucking year. So for a very basic plan that'll cover basic like dental and, I broke my leg sort of stuff, I'm going to be paying through the nose and I might never even use it for the next 50 years. I don't even know. There's no point to getting it. But if there were hyper competition in it, it'd be a lot cheaper. And then for people who still can't afford it, for the truly poor, give them a direct subsidy. Give them a voucher or something. Yes, that will marginally increase the cost of the lower level plans. Okay, people like myself can deal with that extra $10 a month. People who are very poor, they can't. Okay, subsidize them directly, problem solved. Only one step, one middleman, very efficient. And some people would be able to rely upon private charities as well. The free market will still fix it. They still want that healthcare money. They'll do something about it. As far as free education, here's a better suggestion. Stop giving government grants unconditionally to these schools. Right now, the government throws a bunch of money into a new program to help, poor kids get into college. So the college admits people based on that, knowing that they'll get paid by the government. And then it takes that money and it raises the tuition anyway. So they're still getting, debt through these private firms. Loan sharks, basically. And then they build a new sports stadium to make more money because they're profit-seeking entities, schools are. That's just inherent. There's nothing wrong with it. The idea that profit or profitability or that capitalism is a bad idea is hilarious to me. No, profiting is great, but when government gets involved, what ends up happening is the opposite of the intent of those that are actually good-hearted and believe in redistributionism. There are some bleeding hearts out there. They mean very well. I have no problem. They mean well. They think that if they just give more, if they're just more merciful to the poor, society will be better. No more orphans, no more widows. Everyone will be taken care of. We can be generous and kind because we have all this money. It would be lovely if that's the way that it worked. Economically, it's just not. The best thing that you can do is throw direct subsidies to those who truly, desperately need it and leave everything else completely alone. Whenever possible. And these educational facilities, you give them a $10 million grant, they're not going to use that to drop the cost. Why would they give it to the students? Why the hell would they give it to, oh yeah, we're going to cut your tuition, Jimmy, by 50% because the government gave us money for the poor, and you're from, Appalachia, so now you get, free to... No, that's not going to happen. He's going to get a loan, and you're going to take that $10 million, and you're going to open up a new hall for women's studies, or you're going to open up another football stadium, or you're going to buy another theater, or you're going to create more residential dorms, or you're going to put solar panels up on everything, and that energy transference isn't going to lower the cost either. Your prices will continue to rise year over year over year, and you'll beg the government for more and say, look, student loan prices are just too damn high. People can no longer afford it. Please, Uncle Sam, subsidize things some more. It's going to get to the point where for the most basic rudimentary college education at a low-level state institution will cost you $100,000. Right now, that's more, you go to UVM or something like that. No, pretty soon you'll be doing that to go to your local community buttfuck college. We only offer one course, liberal arts. Yeah, it's going to be $10,000 a year in tuition. That's what's going to happen if you go with Bernie Sanders. There would be absolutely no reason if Sanders were to create some sort of weird hybrid system to pay off colleges and hospitals. There's no reason they wouldn't just raise prices astronomically. Of course they would. You'd have even less competition. By the way, what are you going to do about that kid over there who clearly isn't qualified to go to college but says, hey, government has taken over the educational system. You can't tell me I have to stay out. You have to offer me the same equal protection under the law. So that little Jimmy gets straight D's in school. He's got an IQ of about 60. He's going to college. What are you going to do? You're not going to be able to fail him. Oh, it's going to be too dumb to fail as far as the schools go. You're going to ruin the educational system. Our educational system used to be one of the top in the world. Easily in the top 3 or 4 in the world 50 years ago. No, that's before a lot of government intrusion and regulation, and before these colleges with that money started building a bunch of electoral course bullshit and more sports stadiums and stuff, and Syracuse focusing on basically, can you dribble a basketball? Yeah, well then you passed all your courses, don't worry about it. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And Bernie Sanders' socialism would make the problem worse. The free market can fix it, but there's no free market right now. That's what we truly need. That's about all. Peace out.